Hello, it's Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we are going to be talking about, well, it's funny because I posted yesterday on Facebook that Biden was going to finally address border security, and I don't think anyone liked it. I think everybody just put laughing faces. Everybody's put laughing faces. I definitely want to talk about Cori Bush's comment made toward Byron Donalds about him being selected by the group that's trying to thwart McCarthy into speakership, which obviously is still going on back and forth with the negotiating. And there's some people who want to never vote for him, period. And there's some people who want concessions, and he's actually made a lot of concessions. So we'll see where that goes, because they haven't listed a viable candidate. Because even Byron Donalds himself, he hasn't been in Congress long, and he's a good guy. He's made some, good votes. There's some votes that Republicans have made in the past year or so that have been very questionable, and he's been very solid. But he doesn't even want to be a speaker. He did vote for himself, which is pretty funny, because he said, well, it's pretty cool. Why would I not vote for myself? But people were noting that was historic, because you had two Black people nominated at the same time for speakership. And Cori Bush said, oh, it's not historic. He's a prop. And so definitely want to talk about that, which he did address that as well. And also Dr. Jordan Peterson is being challenged by the Canadian government, and they're thinking about revoking his licenses if he does not submit to re-education, as he's putting it. And he is challenging it in court. He's not hopeful at all that he's going to be able to meet that challenge with the justice system. And that's a terrible spot to be in, that you know that you're in the right, you're standing up on principles, but you don't actually feel like the justice will have your back at the end of the day. But he's going to fight. And I guess the chips will fall where they will fall. But he's going to stand on his principles. And we'll see where it all leads. So those are the topics of today. So should be an exciting, fun show. Before I get into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on the website, different videos. Someone said drama is an ingredient. Check out different videos we have on the website, different articles that we have on the website. I just dropped one that was related to the Byron Donalds, which I'll get into that when I get into that segment. So you guys can check out different stuff on the website. If you like what I do here and you appreciate what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com/donate. Costs to stream, costs to run my website, costs to do all that good stuff, all the things that people have requested as far as expansion. That stuff isn't free either. So if you would like to help Black Tea News cover some of our overhead and help us expand, I appreciate everyone who watches, who subscribes, who does all that good stuff, and make sure that if you can, go the extra mile, and I ask that you do support. Also, make sure that you are liking, following, subscribing everywhere on all the different kind of platforms. But I was requested that I make a Rumble account. I did make a Rumble account. I don't have enough subscribers to stream live there yet. So if you would like me to stream live on Rumble, please do that. But please go ahead and follow Rumble, just regardless if you have a Rumble account, or go make a Rumble account. A friend of mine, I guess I don't know him personally, just, we follow each other. He got his entire YouTube channel yanked, and he's not sure why. He said it wasn't clear, so he's trying to figure that out. I don't watch. He has a radio show, lives out on the west side of the state, and I can't imagine that his content is extraordinarily controversial. To the left, I'm sure. I can't. I don't know how much more controversial his stuff can possibly be than mine. Maybe he's gotten into more election stuff than I have. I'm not. I'm not sure. And people really pick and choose when they go after you. I definitely, there's other accounts that are bigger than mine that are conservative accounts that have said some more radical things, but they still have their accounts. But it is concerning when you don't know how long your stuff is going to last on these social media platforms. And so make sure that you are going to the website, that you're dropping in your email, so you can get those sort of notifications when we send out some kind of email blast. I'm glad for the growth that I've had on YouTube. I've been like, I don't know, throttled for the longest time, and some of my shorts started to pick up, and more people started to watch and subscribe on there. But these platforms are not promised. Christians, the Bible is like, tomorrow's not promised. These tomorrow's not promised on these platforms. And it wasn't too long ago that I temporarily lost 2 of my TikTok accounts because due to trolls and stuff, and I was able to repeal a lot of my videos, which I took some down, which we talked about that a little yesterday. So just make sure that you are supporting in the ways that you can and following across as much as you can. We all have multiple social media accounts, but go ahead. If you have an email, go the extra mile, go to the website, drop in your email. And we know that Rumble, at least, will not censor in the way that other folks do. So, but the issue with Rumble is that it doesn't have as much discoverability as other platforms. So if you want to build up Rumble, go on Rumble. And it's Black Tea News. So there should be a link. I think there's a link in the description if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube. If there's not, the handle is at Black Tea News for Rumble. So just wanted to let you know what's going on. Also support different merchandise in the store. Even stuff on different platforms for merchandise. People have been kicked off for different stuff. We just have to continue to make a parallel economy. And the bigger that we grow Black Tea News, the more we can kind of insulate and protect ourselves from what these other companies will do when they try to censor you. But you can go ahead and look at, got Black Tea Mug. We got the My Money, My Business shirt. We're talking about Canada. I made this during the trucker protest. So you guys can check out different stuff that we have on the website. I love the "You Are Not the Special" mugs. You can get that for someone in your life who needs to hear that. And also, I do create books myself. I have one nonfiction book, and I have the rest that are published are. One nonfiction and the rest are fiction. That's a picture with me and all my published books currently. So if you go to Black Tea News and hit the merchandise button, there's a banner that'll take you to my book website. Otherwise, you guys can just follow me on Amazon and look at all the stuff that I got. So I like to write historical fiction, fantasy. I got paranormal romance. I got demon hunters and mermaids and vampires and like mutants and Civil War era kind of, just all kinds of stuff that you guys can check out. So go ahead and support in that way. And also sign up for information on the website about, of course, God is blatantly against abortion, which I will let you guys know when that's on pre-order. So I do not have a meme for you today. I'm very sorry about that. So let's just dive into this story with Byron Donalds. So we know that there's the fight going on with Kevin McCarthy, and there's holdouts. There's like 20 people who keep voting against him. Some of them just want a lot of concessions, which he's given a lot of concessions. Some people don't want him ever. So I don't know who that alternative is going to be. They've put up Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan very much does not want to be the speaker. He wants to interrogate witnesses and be the chair of like the Judiciary Committee. And people want him to do that. So he very much doesn't want to be the speaker. Byron Donald was nominated to be the speaker. Gates nominated Trump, by the way. So I wonder how happy he is about losing another election there. But some people really, really entertain and want Trump to be the speaker. I'm like, one, I don't think he'd be good at it because I think it would bore him. Like he does like petty stuff. I think he likes to be petty. He does like to negotiate some bit. He does like to negotiate, but I don't think the nitty gritty details of that stuff really interests him a lot. I don't think he'd like the job, just to be frank. I just don't think he'd like it. So people pushing for it because they like the optics of him standing behind Biden during speeches, the State of the Union, and making faces or something. Because I have seen those memes. It's fun to meme. It's fun to meme, but in all seriousness, he would not want to do that job. So the opponents to McCarthy, I don't know who their viable candidate is because it's not Byron Donalds, but though he did vote for himself. And I don't have the clip of him saying that he was asked by reporters if he wanted to be speaker. He's like, no, not really. And they're like, why did you vote for yourself? He's like, because it's cool. Why wouldn't I vote for myself? And I'm like, I understand. I understand. There is a clip like circulating, at least on Twitter, about he was asked about retribution. And so this was a neat response, I thought.
Are you worried about retribution after the fact? There was threats that folks that weren't going to vote for McCarthy would be kicked off committees. Now you've put yourself in a pretty public position opposing the person that could be the speaker. Are you worried about retribution?
Man, I'm 6'2", 275. I'm not worried about that. Seriously.
It's like y'all I ain't scared of y'all. It's just that kind of energy. So yeah, but he said that they can get there as far as it's possible to get there supporting McCarthy. So it seems like Gates is like not moving at all, and he's like a never McCarthy period. But not all of them feel that way. So and then there's so many people frustrated with the people dissenting. They're like, why should like 20 or really like 10 of you, though there's like 20, some of them want concessions and some of them are just like never. But they're like, why should you guys get to override like 200 other people? So this could last a while. This could really last a while. But as far as Byron Donald being nominated, it is historical in the sense that you had Hakeem Jeffries, who's a crazy person, by the way. And also Democrats talk about election denial. He's an election denier, but they've changed the phrase, the meaning of the word. So if you're an election denier, it doesn't mean that you deny the results of an election. It means that you've denied the results of the 2020 election. And I'm not kidding. There's been different articles about election denial and in this past like midterm, and they specifically are like, oh, we're talking about the 2020 election. Like CNN did this huge profile on all these people running for election who were election deniers, and they had a very broad range of as far as the definition. So it included people who congratulated Biden. It included people who maybe asked questions but didn't like say that Trump legitimately won. They had Kristi Noem on there. They had Ron DeSantis on there. They just all kinds of stuff on top of people, along with people like Carrie Lake, etc. So, but who wasn't on there? Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams did make their list of people who denied an election. Hakeem Jeffries didn't make a list on the list of people who denied elections because they don't want to look at any other election besides 2020. That is the only relevant information to them. But anyway, he's a Democrat's pick, and he will probably be the minority leader, but he keeps getting the plurality vote because all the Democrats are in sync with voting with him, and the Republicans are fighting, and they don't have a big majority. They do have the majority, but it's very slim. So he keeps winning the plurality, but you have to win the majority. So so you get to have this historic vote with two Black candidates for speaker, One of them is getting the most votes, and then there's another black man on it. So Republicans, when Byron Donald was nominated, Chip Roy acknowledged the historical moment, and you had another congressperson who brought up the history and that the first, black congressmen were Republicans. And so there was an article from Business Insider, and I saw that article and I was just reading up on some stuff the other day, and it made me annoyed because when they brought up that point, just referencing what a congressperson said, they were like, oh, which, by the way, Joseph H. Rainey actually was temporarily speaker. So we technically had a black speaker for just a little bit, but he decided to bring up the Southern strategy. And he's like, well, this was before the ideological shift of the Republicans and Democrats. So he didn't merely mention the Southern strategy. He referenced it as a point of origin of the party switch. So obviously Republicans and Democrats have changed over the years. Obviously people have changed from how conservative and liberal they are, which classic liberals are not what we think of liberals today as far as what's in the Democrat Party. Most people are like leftists, and there's not many classic liberals. Classic liberals are more like libertarians, really, or they're conservatives, or they're politically homeless, but they're not Democrats, and all that can be kind of relative as well. But as far as the idea that the racists in the Democrat Party just decided to switch all of a sudden to Republicans, that is a myth. And it was unnecessary to insert that sort of narrative in there. So even there was a link to the Political Dictionary or whatever, politicaldictionary.com or something. And it talked about the Southern strategy. And if you scrolled a bit down, it did at least acknowledge that there are historians that refute the Southern strategy because, one, it didn't work if there was such a thing, because Nixon didn't win the Deep South. He lost it to a Democrat segregationist, George Wallace. And people still kept voting Democrat in the South after that anyway. I did a video some time ago. I don't know if it's on this channel. I know I put it on my backup YouTube channel when I couldn't post on this one. I was in a timeout. But I did put it on TikTok. And I went through, just going through the Southern states and just looked at the history of the governors and like blue line, blue line, blue line, blue line, blue. You can just go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not the greatest sources, but something with this, just listing people's parties, you can go ahead and just look at Wikipedia and just see blue governor, blue governor, blue governor, blue. It's all the way down. Like you'll find some blips of red, like, right after, Civil War era, and but it's like blue, 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 blue. And it will not change into red until like the 90s in most cases. And then even some of them will switch back and forth, but like solid red in the South, you won't really see that into the 2000s. So if you're very young, you may not really have a perception of the South being anything other than Republican. If you're younger than me, maybe if you're in your 20s or something like that. But if you're older than that, you perhaps remember when the South was just very Democrat. But there's also evidence that people began to switch, not because they're like, oh, I'm racist and I want to go with those Republicans because I want to maintain my racist agenda. So I'm going to join the party that freed the slaves and fought segregationists and all that stuff. No, they began to, the South did start changing, but it was due to economics. So people started switching to Republican politics over economic opportunities. So the whole idea that that the parties just switched and the races just went to the Republicans and all the Democrats are good now and the Republicans are bad, it's just not true. And it is a very convenient narrative for the Democrats. If the Democrats didn't want to be associated with the party of slavery, then they could have just they could have disbarred their party, got rid of it, and just rebranded. But that's not what they decided to do. They decided to like try to rewrite history. And for the most part, I guess they like own the institutions and have been able to do that, because there's so many people who are convinced of this. And when you just have an article, you think you're reading an article just plainly explaining what's going on. And then they're like, well, just FYI, all these Black people who are Republicans, this was before there was a huge ideological shift and stuff. Which when I first tweeted about it, I was like preparing my message for Bible study. I just looked on, started scrolling my phone, got distracted a little bit, and then I saw it and then I screenshot it and I was like, I don't have the time to address this because I have to teach a Bible study. But but I said the party that dehumanized my ancestors is the same party who dehumanizes the unborn. People always hate when you make a comparison to slavery and abortion, but frankly, people use the same kind of arguments, which I wrote an article on blacktnews.com about what is 4th of July to the unborn, relating that and comparing it to what is 4th of July to a slave, the speech that Frederick Douglass gave. So it's a good read. I'd recommend you go check it out on the website. But truly, people do use the same kind of arguments. There was a very, very viral video with debate with Michael Knowles and I don't know her full name, but Bronte is at least her first name, I think. She's an abortion activist. She has a lot of Twitter followers. I only saw one Twitter video with her ever. She just now popped on my feed. But and someone was replying to her. That's why she popped up. So they were talking, obviously discussing abortion, but her arguments were kind of so hard to get through. But I was glad that I watched the whole thing, because I'm like, man, she gives a master class. And I'll have to break this down eventually in a video, or at least an article, but I think maybe both. She gave a master class in why I believe that if you support abortion, you probably would have supported slavery in the 1800s. And I'll leave that at that, and you'll have to just be on the edge of your seat until I go into more detail of it. But a lot of the same arguments, the same kind of logic for both scenarios. So the Democrats, it just doesn't make sense to think that the switch existed. Just think about the current president of the United States, who is old, very old. Like the Vietnam War was like going on when he was in office. Like when he said that Afghanistan, you wouldn't have like the same situation that happened in Nam. Like he was in office during that same situation. That's how old he is. That's how long he's been in office. But just think about this, that he, spoke at a Klansman's funeral. Senator Robert Byrd, Democrat senator, right? Who like apologized for his thinking or whatever, still, dropped some, I'm pretty sure that was him that dropped the N-word a couple times in an interview. So he spoke at his funeral, this Klansman who served for a long time in the Democrat Party. And he was also interviewed by Chris Wallace some years ago, not like 30 years ago, but some years ago, talking about running for president. And Chris Wallace asked, how are you going to appeal to these southern states, especially when you have other southern candidates in the race? And he's like, you don't know my state. My state was a slave state. And I'm not joking. If you go read the article I posted today, I do have a link in there, but it's easy to find on YouTube at least, which is one of the things I put on this shirt that's denounce white supremacy, defeat Joe Biden, with a list of some of his racism on the back. That totally made the list. The slave state remark. So I don't know what was all going in his head when he said that. It was I don't know, too much of an honest moment. His brain has always been bad. It's never been made with the good stuff. But at least it comes off as he was bragging about being from a slave state, and obviously thought that would be a plus to be able to win a Democrat primary. So when people talk about the party switch, when did it happen? When did it happen? That's another reason why they think that all these, that like the evidence is that there's no like black people in the Republican Party, and which I've gone into why people vote black people vote Democrat. I have a lengthy video somewhere on this YouTube channel about it. I'm thinking about redoing it and condensing it a bit. But the switch then started, it's happened gradually over time, and it started like in the 30s with the New Deal, which is ironic because there were things in the New Deal that actually hurt black people. When people mention systemic racism, the first thing they mention is normally redlining. That happened under FDR, bruh. So it started in the 30s and stuff, when people were promising stuff, which it left people the conundrum, because like, well, this is the party that, of liberty and freedom, but they're offering stuff. So I mean, Democrats just kind of caught on to, if we give them stuff, they will come. And that hasn't really changed. It really hasn't changed. And some of the policies that they push today, major policies, are rooted in some kind of systemic racism or racist sort of background, history of racism. I mean, Democrats aren't the only ones who engaged in like limiting gun rights, but white people didn't want black people able to defend themselves, so you had gun control laws that started to pop up. Minimum wage is actually rooted in eugenics. The idea that there are superior people who shouldn't have to compete with people who they deem to be the unemployables or their inferiors or whatever, and they knew that it would have a negative impact. And Royal Meeker, who worked for the Woodrow Wilson administration, thought that was a good thing if people were gonna be unemployed and have to be on welfare and stuff, because that would at least put them on the government teat, and they couldn't just go and have their own families and live their own lives and be the masters of their own destiny. So there's that. And of course, abortion. I'm not gonna say all abortion is rooted in eugenics, but we at least know that Planned Parenthood's founder, Margaret Sanger, was a eugenicist. And he's like, well, that was just her. The person who took over her right after, Alan Guttmacher, was also a eugenicist. And today they're like, women of color especially need abortion. I'm like, y'all don't think that sounds racist? And I don't think they mean it with malice, but we are talking about killing their babies. Like, so we could really, 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 really try to help women, as opposed to saying like, this is a solution. And there's like, well, we just want them the choice. I'm like, I don't think that's something that our government should be like pushing or supporting or subsidizing, but whatever. Actually, there's one video of a woman, it's very viral on TikTok. Her boyfriend was plucking up signs for like pregnancy crisis centers, and the signs are saying, we can help you, we can help. And it was like a thirst trap kind of video for a boyfriend, kind of like she was highlighting, how awesome he was or something, like he was some kind of hero. And I've seen people stitch it and just like, you guys say that pro-life people don't do enough. And when they just have signs out here that says, they didn't have pictures of aborted babies on there that were like grotesque and in your face. They just said, we can help you. And then they were not okay with that, and they wanted those signs plucked up. So the party switch thing is a myth. It's totally myth. And there's more policies, but we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. So there's people unhappy when people noted the historical nature of Byron Donalds being selected. And Cori Bush certainly was not happy, and she tweeted this. What does for? I don't know what that stands for. Byron Donalds is not a historic candidate for speaker. He is a prop. Despite being Black, he supports a policy agenda intent on upholding and perpetuating white supremacy. His name being in the mix is not progress. It's pathetic. So a couple things. Cori Bush is like a BLM Marxist weirdo. And which, by the way, there's hard data that supports like BLM and the defund police movement has actually led to more crime and death and it being unsafe for minorities. So if you want to talk about someone who perpetuates white supremacy or just Black oppression, Cori Bush would be that person. I've talked about this article a lot of times, but a Reuters data scientist, which I did link in my article about Business Insider and Byron Donalds, that they analyzed all this data from BLM and how their narrative and how it was affecting the Black community. And long story short, Reuters didn't like it. Their employees didn't like it. And they ended up letting them go, firing their data scientists. And it wasn't just data that he presented. He also presented data from a brilliant Harvard professor who thought that policing would be racist and looked into other kind of stuff. But the more he did his data, the more he realized he was wrong. So there's all kinds of stats in it. It's very long, but it's a good read. And we've gone through it in the past. So if you want to look that up on your own time, it's good. But there's data to support that Cori Bush's sort of narrative and worldview is hurting Blacks, especially like her pro-choice opinions, which she herself has described some pretty horrific situations that she's been in while having abortions. So it's all very strange. Which Byron tweeted back at her and said, well, he was like, nobody asked you and we can debate. But they always go to, you're the black face of white supremacy. That's what they said about Larry Elder as well when he ran in California. Was it one of their papers had wrote about how he's the black face of white supremacy or something along those lines, and was just so uncalled for and disgusting and untrue. But that's the route they go. One of the reasons why you see so many people who are Black vote Democrat is because the Democrats have done well. So many Black people see their identity rooted in their Blackness. Now for other groups, it's not true. Like white people, it's like 15%. Black people, it's 85%, like according to Pew Research. And so Democrats have married the idea of being Black with your political affiliation. So if you are not a Democrat, people will treat you like garbage. They don't want for people to be aware that there are other options out there for you. So if you begin to question, if you step out of line, they will just delegitimize you by saying that you're not a real Black person, that you're an Oreo, that you're going as far to say that you're white supremacist. My dad was once told that he's more dangerous than any white supremacist, a pastor from Pontiac. Okay. But that's what they'll say. So it's just a repeated tactic. Again, they'll say this stuff while pushing actual policies that hurt Black communities. So he actually was asked about this on Fox, and he did respond to it. So I'm going to go ahead and play that.
Your Democrat colleague, sure. Cori Bush, attacked you online. In a tweet, she calls you a prop for upholding white supremacy. I'd like you to take this opportunity to respond to that, sir.
Well, I mean, first of all, I thought it was just blatantly outrageous. First, man, that sucked, man. To be honest with you, man, I'm sorry. I feel, bad that she really put that out there because, if you see a Black man rising, I mean, let the man rise, even if you don't agree with him. Specifically to my policies, I would argue that she should sit down and debate me one-on-one. And let's do that, Stu. We could do it on your program. We could do it on CNN. We could do it on MSNBC. I'm open to all of that. But to throw a statement out there, I thought was just the complete wrong thing to do. As a Black man to a Black woman, I would have never done that to her. It's a shame that she did it to me.
It was an insult. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. We appreciate it. I know you've got to go back to negotiations, and we're so glad that you're with us this morning to at least appear with us. We appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
You got it.
Yeah. So it's funny because you'll see all these people who are so pro like CRT and stuff, and they'll talk about lived experiences. But if you're a Black Republican, it's like arguing with like a white liberal. They're like, shut up, we know better. It's so funny. So it's like lived experiences as a Black person just goes out the door. But people make it seem like being a minority person of color is so important. But when there's there's a difference in ideology, it's like, no, that sort of camaraderie shouldn't exist. We're just going to throw you under the bus. And Byron Donalds, he wanted to be part of like the Black caucus, and they wouldn't let him in because he was like an America First kind of MAGA guy. So, you know, Byron's been in the news quite a bit for not always the best reasons, but to no fault of his own, but just sort of unfortunate conversations that people have to have. Like he voted against the Respect for Marriage Act, and people were calling him out because he's married to a white woman, and they shoehorn interracial marriage in there, though interracial marriage isn't the same as same-sex marriage. And they don't face the same sort of legal challenges if like Obergefell, for example, goes down. Like there's still like different legal things that make them separate. I mean, interracial marriage isn't going anywhere. So but the reason why they included interracial marriage is so if Mitch McConnell, who voted against it, they could be like, what's up with this? He's married to an Asian woman. Or Byron Donalds is like, what's up with this? He's married to a white woman. Or people who aren't in interracial marriages, they could still say that person is a racist because they needed that extra cover there. So it's just a ploy. Now, I did see some people like Katrina Pearson did mention she didn't like kind of how much they were boasting about his race, like the Republican colleagues and stuff. I don't think so. And there were Democrats saying that they only picked him because he's Black, or only voted for him because he's Black. And it's funny because another liberal like replied under that liberal, and they said something that made so much sense. I'm like, is this person actually a liberal? And I went to their page, looked a couple things. I'm like, no, this is a liberal. But they asked the question, like, if Republicans are only voting for Byron Donalds just because he's Black, then why won't they vote for Hakeem Jeffries? And maybe they were trying to be smart, but the answer is obviously there's ideology. It's not just about race. And you know what? Democrats talk about race a lot, but ideology also matters to them as well. They thought it was so historic that Ketanji Brown Jackson was nominated to the Supreme Court by Biden, which he nominated her because she was Black. Not only because she was Black, she had other credentials. I still think she's a radical person, and I didn't like a lot of her stuff in her. She had an impressive resume, but she still had things in her that I still didn't think should have made her qualified for the bench. But it is what it is. She got, she's there. But if she had the same qualifications and was white, then they wouldn't have nominated. She wouldn't have been nominated. She wouldn't have even been considered. So she's definitely there because of her skin color. But they're all like, oh, this is historic. This is great. Black woman on there, etc. And we have a Black woman in Michigan who's on our Michigan Supreme Court. She lost the election, but then she got appointed anyway. And they're like, oh, this is historic. This is great. But they don't have the same kind of affection for like Clarence Thomas. He's a traitor. They hate him. They hate his guts. So people try to uphold race like it's its own virtue. But when you impart ideology, they just want to disqualify you, and they forget that they ever pretended like race mattered. So it's all very fascinating, and how people treat race. I think the reason why they picked Donald is because he's a good guy, because he's a MAGA person, because he's their friends, a lot of this folks' friends, and they'll keep picking folks. Like I said, he voted for himself because he thought it was cool. Like, why wouldn't you vote for yourself? But he doesn't want to be speaker. They don't have it. He's not the only non-serious candidate that they've picked. Like Jim Jordan doesn't want to be speaker. He's a good guy. He's very principled, conservative, but he doesn't want to be speaker. So ultimately, I would say that those guys need to make some kind of deal or make some kind of path forward for someone else. Or because Marjorie Taylor Greene is just like, these guys don't have a plan. Like, I think they have a plan. Thwarting is a plan. Like, is it a viable, long-term, feasible plan? No, I guess not. Unless chaos is just the goal, but they got to do some work at some point in time. Or do they? No, they do have to do some work at some point in time. So they are going to either have to pick someone else who has a pathway to victory, or they have to make concessions. Enough of them have to make concessions to McCarthy, which they have a very slim margin to do that. Or something worse could happen. The Democrats could just come in with a different plan and pick some kind of moderate Republican who's willing to strike up some kind of deal, which they wanted to Democrat said that they were open to having a moderate Republican if they limited things like subpoena powers and some other stuff. So that would put a damper on the Republicans' goals of doing all these investigations and stuff. So I think the Democrats are going to come up with a better plan. They're not going to want to put up with Republicans playing games for 2 months. They'll just come in with a different plan to derail them. So I would advise them to get it together. But in the meantime, Democrats, you don't have to be racist. You really don't. You really, really don't. Okay, moving on. So Biden decided to address immigration. And again, I mentioned this yesterday that he planned to talk about immigration, and everyone just like replied with a laughing face. No one was even angry. Everybody just laughed because just how, I don't know, silly it is. Like, it's not silly because it is an important thing that they have to contend with, but it's obvious that they've made the border situation so much worse. And I don't have, they know how to make it better, but they haven't taken steps to make it better. And the only question is, will they do something about it finally, because they're kind of forced to as far as politics goes. And since they didn't get shellacked in the midterms, maybe they don't feel like they have to. But at the same time, Biden is running for re-election, and he is going to have to do somewhat well in some of those states. So Biden has made some recommendations, and don't know how they're going to work out. But one thing he said, he was asked about why he's going to go to the border now of all times, and his answer is garbage.
Why did you decide that now is finally the right time to visit the southern border? Republicans have been calling on you to do this since the beginning.
Because Republicans haven't been serious about this at all. Come on. They haven't been serious about this at all. I wanted to make sure that I knew what the outcome, at least the near outcome, was on Title 42 before I went down. We don't have that yet, so I had to operate. I don't like Title 42, but it's the law now. I have to operate within it. My prediction is, there's nothing particularly insightful about this, Title 42 is going to go away before the end of the year in terms of the Supreme Court, my prediction. And then we're going to have to use Title 8. 8, right? Am I right? Yeah, Title 8. 8, 9, and which we can implement what we're doing here, plus some other things. But so I wanted to make sure there was a rational way in which we could begin to announce it. But I couldn't wait once the Supreme Court ruled that they're not going to make the final decision on Title 42 for some time, for another, who knows, probably not till June, in that range. Oh, I don't know that for a fact.
So, Biden hasn't been pushing to make good legislation as far as the border to replace something like Title 42. They fought tooth and nail about, but to say the Republicans aren't serious, and I guess there's a bit of an argument because they passed that omnibus bill, knowing that they approved funding, but the funding could not go toward like deporting, like flying people off, hiring permanent people for the border. Like the money had to basically be toward processing, which would different experts around the issue said that you're just going to make it worse. So I'm still upset about the Republicans in that omnibus bill. It is what it is. So maybe you can make the argument from that standpoint. But there's people who are very upset and want something done about the border. There's always going to be like squishy Republicans that want to do amnesty and all that kind of stuff that I'm sure that obviously Biden and them also want too. But there's people who very much want tough border security and want to stop the influx of so many people coming in, where it's disrupting a lot of people's lives. There's where some people are crossing, it's very dangerous. The fentanyl coming over the border is extraordinarily dangerous. Biden said that there's like 20,000 pounds. He said it could kill like 1,000 people or something. And it's like, no, it could kill like billions of people. What are you talking about? I don't know how many fact checkers are going to get him on that, but you know, that's something that people have been correcting, at least on Twitter, about. It's just amazing. And the people, the drug dealers will have people come in one side while Border Patrol goes to go take care of all the influx of people coming in, they'll sneak through drugs. So it's a huge problem. There's still kids in like cages and stuff, but they move people into the interior so they don't have to be crowded in one place, which there are still people crowded, but they don't want people just aren't reporting how bad it is. But we've had record numbers of people crossing the border. So him saying, oh, Republicans weren't serious about all this and that's why I didn't go to the border, that's really crazy. That's really crazy. First of all, he's the president. He gets to set the tone. He gets to sign the bills. His party has had control of the government. To say I didn't do this thing because the Republicans aren't serious, that's crazy. Because he's in charge. He's in charge. He's gotten a lot of legislative victories that I haven't been happy about, but he's had some victories over legislation. And if he wanted to pass something that was serious to do something for the border, then he could get people on board, the Republicans on board. He wouldn't even need to get the Republicans really on board for what he could have done in the past few years as a president. So to say that Republicans weren't serious and that's why he didn't go to the border, why would their attitude about the border stop the president from the United States from going to the border? Why would that stop them? And then this clip is not that old.
At the border, because there's a more important thing going on. They're going to invest billions of dollars in a new enterprise.
Mr. President.
So in case you couldn't make that out, they said, Mr. President, why aren't you going to the border? He went to Arizona. He's like, because there are more important things. And he talked about they're going to invest some money. So he was there for other matters, but he said there's more important things going on. Now, for people living in the border towns, this is a big deal. And so people were definitely talking about how he said there are more important things going on. If Joe Biden thinks it's important enough to take so many vacations, he thinks it's important enough to go to a vacation, and so much so that he didn't wait for the ink to dry on the bill that he needed to sign. So they flew it out there, talk about a carbon footprint, so he could sign the omnibus bill. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. And to say that he wouldn't go to the border because Republicans weren't serious, it's just an excuse. And I don't think it's a good excuse. I don't think his constituents need him to make good excuses. I mean, at least not the people who are going to support him no matter what, just because they don't want Trump or whoever else in the office. A lot of people wanted to vote for Joe Biden so they could just kind of zone out. They're like, oh, things are so okay, and I want to stop thinking about politics all the time and being so enraged every time I turn on the TV and see the orange man there. So I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, and hopefully things will quiet down. Well, things have gotten a lot worse on a lot of different fronts. But I guess you checked out. So you got to not focus on the orange man, though people are very much still focused on the orange man, want him to be imprisoned and etc. So here's another statement from Biden, and he believes that one way that they're going to curb the border issue is by an app.
Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas will detail these actions very shortly after I finish at Homeland Security. But here's one significant step we're taking. Over the summer, we saw a huge spike in the number of Venezuelans traveling through Mexico and attempting to enter the United States without going through our legal processes. We responded by using and ensuring that there are two safe and lawful ways for someone leaving the country to come to America. That was one of the reasons you were proposing. First, if they're seeking asylum, they can use an app on their cell phone called CBP1, O-N-E, CBP1, O-N-E. That's to spell it out, not the number one. To schedule an appointment at a port of entry and make their asylum claim there without crossing the border unlawfully and have a decision determined by an asylum officer, do they qualify? Second, in October...
Yeah, so I don't know how many people are going to go do that when the DHS is like collecting all their personal like information like that. So he's also telling people like remain in Mexico, and some people are noting, Trump was an awful terrible person for saying, remain in Mexico, don't come over here, and they're stressing people to go through the port of entries or we're going to arrest you, all that other kind of stuff. When it's just like normal, we need to enforce our borders kind of stuff. But Trump was a terrible, awful person. I don't know how many people are actually going to use this app. Again, they're going to collect all this personal information. If people just want to kind of go in and disappear, that's what's going to happen. And also all these people coming in to flood the system for the refugee status, when they're not actual like refugees, they are like clogging up the system for other people who want to get in from other countries, who have different sort of claims that are more pressing and actually legitimate. So it is really, really a huge mess. Gosh, there's another clip. I don't think I have it for you guys, but Biden was like, oh, it's not like these people are sitting around and they get their life savings and they spend all these $1,000 to Coyote and say, drop me off in the middle of a country where we don't speak the language. That sounds like fun. And people in like the Twitter thread of the video, people are like, that's exactly what happened. Like, maybe it's not fun because it's a treacherous journey. And if you send your kids with them and you're not there with them, they could actually be sexually assaulted. It's very a dangerous journey. But people do decide to make it to get to the U.S. and maybe they won't be able to speak the language, but that won't stop them, or doesn't stop people from coming and still wanting to learn the language, and or not learn. There's people who haven't learned language, but they're out here working some people under the table, I guess, maybe a lot more people under the table than what we probably know, and they live their lives and they disappear. And even though they may be caught by DHS or something, and they give them a phone, that's how they keep track of them. They give them a phone now, and they're like, oh, make your court date, and they might be like, oh, cool, new phone, let me never show up still, or oh, this is the way they're tracking me. It was cool for a little bit, but let me ditch this and go to Boost Mobile or something. I don't know. Go to the gas station, get a minute phone. I don't know. But we just haven't been doing wise things as far as the border. The thing that freaked me out when I was like, I don't like to be, I can be maybe pessimistic a bit at times, but I'm not a fearful kind of person. I know I talk about dark things and maybe alarm people, and I have concerns about the state of our world. But as far as like me sitting up like anxious and afraid, I'm just kind of like, God, this world's so crazy. So it's in your hands. Like I know, like I can do my part, but I know you got to do like a lot of it, because there's just everybody's so crazy, like you got to do something. So I'm doing what I can, and I encourage you guys to do what you can. But there's only so much that we can do, but we do have to try. I'm just not going to make myself insane about it, I guess. But one time, I think the first time that I was like deathly like scared, like dread just came over me because I was concerned about the incompetence from the Biden administration, is that Jen Psaki was still the press secretary, and they asked her about how they were going to stop people from coming. And then she's like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. And she like pulled out her notes and she started talking about how they were making cartoons in other countries and like telling people not to come or something like that. And they were doing radio programs and other stuff like that. And all this media that they were doing in other countries or paying to be done in other countries. I don't know if they know that was actually getting done. And they're like, do you have any evidence that it's working? And she's like, well, we'll never know who decides to not come. And I'm like, these people are blowing money on this brain dead project, and they have no intention of tracking if it's even effective. They're just throwing it out there like, well, how would we know? Like just giving it up. So it's like, we just want to waste your money and time on this cute idea we had. And that was her way of bragging on the Biden administration doing something productive to really stop the influx of the border crisis. And obviously didn't work, obviously didn't stop, because we've had record-breaking numbers since then. So I don't know what to tell you guys. They really need to feel some political pressure to make some really positive changes. And unfortunately, they did not get thrashed in the midterms. So the big changes that we really need to see, we're not going to probably see within the next 2 years. Republicans can try to play some hardball, but they do have a slim majority, and we still don't even know who the speaker is right now or going to be. And hopefully the Democrats don't throw in some kind of monkey wrench that just destroys everything. So 2024 is super important. Is very, very important. Which, by the way, there was news today that my state senator, not that I'm proud that she's my state senator, Debbie Stabenow is retiring. She's been there for a very long time. And so with her retiring, it's going to be a crazy race. There's going to be so many Republicans that are going to run. I mean, it's really different when it's an open seat and not an incumbent that's been there for, decades. It's a whole different ballgame. So there's going to be Republicans who probably were just on our ticket who will run again for Senate. People who have run in the past, people who probably shouldn't run who are going to run. But you have name ID and recognition and some pull and money, etc. There's people who are probably going to run, who I'm looking at their names. I'm like, I don't want you to leave from this position you're in to go try to achieve this. But the Democrats will also have probably a lot of names that they'll throw in there. There could be Haley Stevens and Slotkin. Andy Levin just lost his primary to Haley Stevens, so maybe he'll run. Pete Buttigieg is a carpetbagger who moved to Michigan. I guess his husband's parents are from here. So, but I'm sure they also did that because of the possibility of, I don't know, him running for governor or him running for Senate. So people are very unhappy with him as transportation secretary as of now. So I don't know if there's any if that's possible, really. I think Democrats could be in danger of playing their hand a little too much, but we definitely need strong Republican leadership to help guide a victory. And I'm concerned about that right now in Michigan. But that is good news because Democrats have a lot of seats to defend in the Senate. So it's going to be very hard for them to keep the majority in the Senate and going forward in 2024. So hopefully we have a very strong national ticket and people have strong local tickets, and hopefully we can have a major victory after our terrible defeat. Last thing I want to mention before I go is that, which I'll probably talk more about this tomorrow and give it some more time. I did not mean to talk about the Democrats and the racism for so long. But there's so much to say. So Professor Jordan Peterson, he is being threatened with having his license removed if he doesn't submit to re-education because of some of his posts. Now, I guess he could always just do the re-education and then pretend like he never got it and continue posting as he wants, but that's not what he wants to do. He feels that it's unprincipled, and he is challenging it because of sort of things that they're upset about. He said, "I've practiced for 20 years without being investigated. This only started when I became a prominent public figure." And he said that in a phone interview Wednesday morning. He said ever since he came to the rise of the public prominence in 2016, he's been facing nonstop complaints. He's had to hire lawyers to handle these complaints with his college. He said, "All I want to do is tell people what is happening." And he said part of what is happening, this is from the Toronto Sun, by the way, is an attempt at lawfare by people opposed to what Peterson says, and believes a review of some of the complaints shows people who don't live in Canada using American examples to ask the college to punish Peterson over a social media posting. In January 2022, Peterson was tweeting that the world could handle a larger population if handled right, something that goes against the mantra claimed by some that we are overpopulated and harming the planet. Roger Palfrey, a man who describes himself as a scientist and educator, said he disagreed and claimed the world is already overpopulated. And Jordan Peterson retweeted and said, "You're free to leave at any point." And so people said that this was him telling him to kill himself, which obviously is a big no-no, just in general, unless you're a Canadian doctor and you're euthanizing someone. That you can do that all the time. But that is like a leap of logic. But people complain about those sorts of things. And people didn't like his post about the Freedom Convoy. He got banned from Twitter for comments on Ellen. I think it was just Ellen Page comments. So Peterson is not going to comply, and he's going to challenge it. But he is concerned that he will not be able to really get justice. And it'd be awful if he wasn't able to practice. And it's something that he obviously loves to do. So, I mean, he has enough fame and notoriety and deals with Daily Wire and other places, but he could still continue on, at least doing lectures in some kind of form and get the word out there on what he thinks and helping, people on a viral scale. But why do this? Other than cruelty, but cruelty, I believe, is the point. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. I do have to go. I thank you guys for joining me. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, including different articles that we have, like the one that I replied about the Business Insider writing that article about Byron Donalds and the Southern strategy. So go ahead and check that one out. Make sure that you guys are leaving your emails, on the website, that you subscribe to, like, the newsletters, that you guys are following across Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. All my handles are at Black Tea News, with the exception of Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea, and is black like the color, tea like the drink. And if you guys like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. It really does help with the overhead and all that good stuff. So, make sure that you guys do that if you can. Check out different merch on the website, like the "You Are Not That Special" shirt. Also like the "I Am Not the Victim You're Looking For" shirt. So go ahead and get that kind of cool stuff. And I will see you guys tomorrow.